Hey everybody, it's Jay and Nick, and we are back from Thunderhill. Second time already this year that we have been there. Some of the best costumes and themes we have ever seen showed up for this race. One of my favorites, the People's Republic of Racing, came back with car yoga. And then a real unexpected standout was Bill Arnold and his Skid Game theme.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Bill. Of course, he's the man behind Bill Arnold Independent BMW Service right here in the Bay Area. One of the best BMW shops around. He just did a bunch of work to my 2002, and honestly, it's running better than ever.
So Bill is one of the best BMW mechanics going, full stop. So how does that translate to a fully prepared race BMW in Lemons?
And back to the Squid Game theme. Here's a tip. If you have experienced drivers like Jason Camisa from Haggerty and pro road racer Randy Popst on your team, put them in the masks from Squid Game, call your whole theme Skid Game, and in BS, the judges will never notice.
Speaking of fooling the judges, School of Race Car had this brilliant strategy.
Judges were also fooled by this 75 Triumph Spitfire. It seemed like something was off about it, but they couldn't quite put their fingers on it.
Now, instead of trickery, some teams did a direct lobbying approach at this race. Tradeswinds Tribesmen, they really wanted Class C, so they brought this entire basket of bribes, all beginning with C. And the Honda Accord Wheels of Misfortune team, I'll just let you see this.
We have a C.
A C!
There are 2 C's!
We had a handful of new teams or new cars at this event. We can't mention everyone, but there was this VW, this BMW, and these guys, Team Rib Hut with their Mazda RX-8.
Do you remember, like 10 years ago, we had our first RX-8 show, and we were just like, oh, this is terrible. I think we gave them literally 500 million laps because it was such an awesome car that was going to dominate.
Yeah, right. So in the 10 years since then, we've had some time to consider the reality of Mazda Rotary endurance race. We gave this team a much easier time.
Now, besides just new cars coming into the fold at this race, we had to bid goodbye to some cars, including the WAP, the wet-ass Pontiac of Team Sorry for Party, which at the last Thunderhill race got completely wiped out. They held a wake for it at this race, which helped soothe their battered souls when they competed this time in a 73 El Camino SS. See the Lemons World video about that car, by the way. That car was excellent. And by excellent, I mean it was awful.
Speaking of excellent, by which we mean terrible, the Bernal Kids Mustang was running as well as ever.
Back here, put us on YouTube!
Ironically, this car was running all weekend, and we so wished it wasn't.
And that's nothing like the smooth sounds of the Chrysler Slant 6 of Team Valiant Effort, who bribed the judges this time with this fine custom cake.
Other big milestones, we had the 50th race for our favorite friends at Dirty Duck.
And speaking of long-time racers, you had Tired Iron Racing in their Miata. They finally won a race. By their accounting, they were on their 51st race. They celebrated their 50th at the last one, but by some math, they actually did the same amount of events as Dirty Duck. They were counting the one-off Monday sprint that we did like 10 years ago as a separate race. Dirty Duck was counting it as part of the same weekend as that race. Anyway, this is a team that has finished in the top 5 countless times. I say countless because I don't want to add it up. Suffice it to say, it's a lot, and they finally won.
Yeah, Team Captain Mike, he is a great guy, and one of the things we love about him the most is he's not a real racer. He doesn't have those really annoying real racer qualities, so we were rooting for these guys forever, and we're on Race Monitor, and we're watching, and as it starts getting closer, we're thinking, like, they might win, like, they're P2 right now. but could they get into P1 and their closing distances really getting shorter and shorter and shorter? There's some penalty laps factoring into this now. We're trying to calculate the fuel stops. We got tires going into it.
Oh my God, we're real racers.
Oh, son of a f***ing after all these years, like we have to start being that doing all the race monitor like why are we doing this?
Meanwhile, in Class B, Did We Break It in their JTI won the class.
And in Class C, Puff the Magic Dragon in their Camaro again won Class C. And you know, people complain like the cars won Class C a couple of times already and they want it moved up to Class B. But our feeling, honestly, if you can't beat this car and this team with these sponsors, we don't know what to tell you, dudes.
We had a great crew of judges, Sean, Brett, and Chris. The quality of driving was overall very good, but no matter what race you're at, there's gonna be penalties. That Honda team with the Wheel of Misfortune let us borrow it to let other teams spin for their penalties, which included the Build a Snoopy Model Challenge.
Where's the dog?
Finish, or at least make a honest attempt at finishing this giant puzzle. We had Car Twister and Badminton. Get it? Badminton? Because they weren't good at the... Never mind. One creative driver from Surf Bums offered his own penalty, creating an artist rendition of his infraction on track.
As you may know, we always have a special award at each race. It's often themic or geographic. Well, those can be hard to come up with. Not this time. This time it went to Zach. Zach is a guy who lives in the Midwest, and he entered a 2006 Dodge Grand Caravan minivan as his race car. You know, usually you would tow that and your team would fly in. Not Zach. Zach got in his 2006 Grand Caravan like a few days before the race, started it up, and drove to the track, and then drove the race.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So coming up with an award name for him was easy. We called it the Long Distance Dumb AF Minivan Idiot Award.
Unless you think we're capping on Zach, we love dumb AF behavior like this. I mean, that is perfectly lemons. After this race, Zach got back in his 2006 Grand Caravan, drove straight to HPR for the race at HPR the following weekend, and as soon as that was done, drove straight to New Jersey for the race the weekend after that. 3 weekends, driving the Grand Caravan to each race, dumb AF in the best possible way.
As an aside, Zach's team name is Vannenball : the Great American Broad Trip, because it's a bunch of bros crossing the country in a van. He told me that he came up with the name Vannenball before even considering this idea of doing 3 straight races and 3 straight weekends, but Vannenball was so clever that he came up with this plan to go with the name.
Come up with a ridiculous name and then build an entire activity around it. I like it. Moving on to the I Got Screwed trophy is a Dodge Caliber. We love Dodge Calibers because they're basically brand new and as unreliable as something really old. They didn't make very many of them. There are basically none left. And even though it should be a great car, it's but terrible. In other words, we love this kind of Lemons car.
Yeah, and at one point, Judge Chris got into the Caliber excitement, picked one up for himself for a Lemons build, but then he drove it and was less enthused about the experience. I shot him an email and said, hey, how's that Caliber build coming? And well, Chris, he sent me an email back.
Meanwhile, we got this team, EPA Racing. They've been running a Caliber for a few events now, and when they showed up, we said, look, it's a Caliber. You can do absolutely anything you want, and we are not going to give you penalty laps. We weren't exactly expecting this.
Yep, that's a gigantic supercharger from Pontiac Grand Prix, and true to our word, the judges put them in Class C, 0 laps. Now, to be fair, there were some iffy parts of this design. The blower was running off of a belt, off of a pulley that they had welded to the outside of the power steering pump, but against all odds, it ran great on Saturday, and they were looking like they had a real shot at a Class C win.
Then on Sunday, they got called in with a black flag for noise. Now, this was Thunderhill's call, not ours. We have a series-wide noise rule because, of course, we don't want to sit around listening to like this. But Thunderhill's actually got a more restrictive rule because, well, the neighbors are going to call Thunderhill. They don't know who we are. So we get that. These guys blew out their muffler with their ludicrously overpowered supercharger, got called by Thunderhill, and it took them like 5 hours to change a muffler, at which point they were totally out of contention. Now, to be fair, there are actually other ways they could have solved this. For example, the Huevos Rancheros, they also got called for sound, and they said, we're just going to come up with a very sophisticated acoustically tuned baffle to deflect the noise away from the offended party.
Judge's Choice is one of those projects that's been in the works for years. This team, Safety Last Racing, is actually an offshoot of the Huevos Rancheros. The father of the Ranchero team captain is the main guy behind this Judge's Choice build. They bought this car, which of course is an MGB GT, then they fitted it with a new engine, which of course is a Buick/Rover V8. That's the engine that every car coot on the internet says you should put in an MG when you're doing your engine swap.
I mean, those old guys who post on the internet and then drive their Miatas to dinner.
Yep, them.
So they actually scored this MGB GT for the very lemons agreeable price of
nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Which gave them the nickname Free B for the car, and then they went and started collecting all of these 215 Buick V8 parts.
And that was 2018. Now, over the last 5 years, we'd get the occasional email from the team, hey guys, we thought we were gonna make it, but we're actually not. We have to make a confession. It's not like we were sitting around before Button Willow 2019 saying, man, I think this is gonna be the event where it shows up.
And then suddenly it showed up. I mean, it was well prepared. It ran well for an MGB. It went around the track. They had kind of a shockingly good MGB weekend.
Yeah, and for anybody else who's inspired by this, all you gotta do is find a free MGB, they're everywhere, and then block out your entire life for the next 5 years. Anyway, well-deserved Judge's Choice.
For the Heroic Fix Trophy, we got to start with an honorable mention. The Zitronenkopf Doomkops came from Salt Lake City on the way over, blew up their trailer, slid down in the valley, was very ugly, but that's not what we're talking about. When they got here, they had 2 cars, one of which was a Mustang, fancy 4-cam Mustang, which they immediately blew up. Now, they had all kinds of wackadoodle theories, none of which hung together about, we had foreign objects in the block, it was running too lean, everything melted. It didn't bother them that they didn't actually know why the car failed because they went out and they just got another motor. Except that motor was a 2-cam, not a 4-cam. And you know what? Nobody races a 2-cam. That's not awesome at all. So they said, we'll just take the 4-cam heads and put them on the 2-cam. The 4-cam heads, that may in fact be why the motor blew up in the first place. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about motors either, but it is possible that whatever foreign objects melting, whatever previously occurred, affected their original heads because after wrenching on this thing forever and getting it back on track, it lasted just a few laps before exploding again.
On the bright side, this was a 2-car team. Second car ran flawlessly in the finish, like 50 positions ahead of this cursed Mustang.
So that car was another Mustang?
No.
The eBay Motors Heroic Fix went to the Stanford highly incompetent team of racing. Now, this team of Stanford students and their Honda Accord have been around for a few races. For this event, they decided to add a second car, which was a Mazda 323. Now, their Lemons adventure started long before arriving at the track. At one point during the build, they had rebuilt the entire Mazda 323 cylinder head, and then some super misguided miscreants stole it from inside the race car.
Yeah, it was even worse than that, because it turns out this was a special 1 state only California single cam 1 year only super rare 323 head, essential to make the car run. That delayed them even more.
So by the time the race weekend rolled around, they were still finishing the roll cage, various other bits. They showed up, and then they discovered that Mazda would not run.
So of course these kids, some of whom I think are engineering students, did what they historically have done. They pulled out a wiring diagram, chased everything down. They finally tracked it to a bad solder connection at the ECU, which of course is the same weird 1 year deal as the engine.
Usually that would have been the end of that. There was an electrical engineer from a different team watching them. They said, well, yeah, I could fix that with my entire professional micro soldering setup with the microscope. But the Stanford kids carefully took apart the ECU, found the bad connection, were able to fix it with the normal tools they had on hand, and got back on track. To be honest, didn't run well, but they did fix it, and it was heroic.
The Halloween Meets Gasoline trophy for the best theme and commitment went to Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron has been around forever. They've always had a Star Wars theme, but they have really upped their game. This time they showed up, they had Chewie, they had Vader, they had Director Krennic. Who does that? They had Leia, they had Padme, they had a full squadron of rogue fighter pilots. They even had a droid doing yoga. And as if that wasn't enough, they even opened up their own secret cantina after the Ranger Road hosted Saturday night potluck. It was pretty awesome. Really, the only thing that was a little weird is at their cantina party, like, they had a no droid policy. I mean, it's 2023.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
The Index of Effluency, the grand prize in lemons, went to the first ever Mitsuoka Viewte. Now you may be asking, what is a Viewte? Well, one guy at Thunderhill said, it's not a word in Japanese or English. So here's the deal. Mitsuoka is a small Japanese manufacturer. One of the things they do is they take normal Japanese cars and rebody them with retro designs. They've got the Boo Boo, which is sort of a Bugatti MG thing, and the Buddy, which is a K5 Blazer from the 70s on a Toyota RAV4, and the Lucade, which is this Excalibur style neoclassic thing. But arguably, their most iconic cars are those that resemble classic British luxury sedans like the Galoo and what you see here, the Viewte.
So longtime Lemons racer Chris Ray, he discovered that 25-year and older Viewtes, you can actually bring them into this country and they're incredibly cheap to buy. Possibly because they're based on a Nissan Micra with like 53 horsepower. So he said, I gotta get one of those. He spent almost nothing to buy this car in Japan and then spent a fortune to get it shipped over here.
But it was all worth it because look at it. In our award notes, we usually have a whole long summary of why a car is winning an award. This was the extent of our notes for the Viewte.
For the record, the Viewte did actually run. In fact, it was the slowest car on the track by far, and yet finished 71st overall.
In our point of view, that's more than enough for an IOE. And here's Lemons in a nutshell.
Stand downward dog, stick your butt up, straighten your arms and legs. Check the toolbox.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?